you're looking for love, you really need to be careful. Not all astrological aspects are created equal, and some can be real red flags when it comes to dating someone. Imagine you meet someone who seems perfect on paper. They're charming, they're intelligent, they share your interests. But as you get to know them, you start to notice some concerning patterns. They're possessive, they're jealous. They have sudden outbursts of anger. Does this sound familiar to you? These behaviors can actually be linked to certain astrological aspects in the birth charts. And trust me, you really don't want to ignore these warning signs. In this video, I'm going to tell you which astrological aspects should make you think twice before swiping right or saying yes to a second date. I'm talking about aspects that can indicate emotional instability, control issues, and even toxic or abusive tendencies. But also don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. I'm going to teach you how to spot these red flags early and how to navigate them, so that you can be more armed with the knowledge of how to deal with this person if you're already in a relationship with them, or if you possibly are considering getting into a relationship. Before I dive in, I just want to say I'm not here to insult anyone who has any of these aspects. I actually have some of these aspects in my natal chart myself. Having some of these aspects myself and dealing with people with these aspects has actually armed me with the knowledge I need to share with you what the dynamic can be if you're dealing with a person with these aspects. So the intention of this video is not to create any hate, not to hurt or insult, but to educate. The first aspect to watch out for is Moon conjunct, square, or opposition to Saturn. At their core, difficult Moon-Saturn aspects suggest issues around nurturing, emotional expression, and basic intimacy needs. The nurturing Moon feels restricted and blocked by Saturn's strict limiting nature. So what does this translate to in real life? Someone with this placement can come across as emotionally unavailable. They can seem distant or just plain cold. They lack the ability to be spontaneous, and they also can't really go with the flow of life. There's constant a sense of restriction and control in their dynamic. They can struggle to open up, and they can be deeply rooted within their insecurities. There's a lot of issues surrounding being nurtured by others and also showing affection themselves, and there's a lot of shadows that they need to resolve regarding this. They can be harsh inner critics, and they can also possibly be incredibly needy in relationships because they do not know how to feel stable and confident within what they create for themselves. So it often has to come from another. They can often rely on other people to provide them with the structure, stability, and security they need in their lives. At the worst, Moon-Saturn natives can be manipulative about getting their emotional needs met. They lay on heavy guilt trips or even use passive-aggressive stonewalling tactics. This aspect is a red flag because it results in somebody who can potentially be emotionally unavailable, an insecure or needy partner who has trouble being vulnerable, and this can lead to a very one-sided, unstable dynamic. If a person with this aspect is unwilling to face their shadows and to do the work that is required to improve, it will make it very difficult for a healthy bond and relationship to blossom. But do not fear, just because someone has this aspect does not mean that it's the end of the world. With awareness and conscious effort, these patterns can be overcome. The key is open and honest communication about emotional needs. You must not be afraid to call this person out, but gently if they're being cold, distant, or shutting down. Encourage them to go through therapy so that they can work through their insecurities. It's also important to make sure that your own emotional needs are met, that you set boundaries, and that you don't settle for mere scraps when it comes to intimacy, forming a connection, and vulnerability. If you're met with persistent emotional unavailability or possible manipulation, it may be time to reconsider. The next one is the Neptune-Mercury square, opposition, or conjunction. These placements can indicate some serious communication and perception issues. Hard Neptune-Mercury aspects blur the line between reality and fantasy when it comes to communication, thinking patterns, and beliefs. Neptune's dreamy, idealistic nature fogs up the rational, concrete mind of Mercury. So what does this look like in the dating world? Someone with this placement may constantly feed you lofty promises, grand romantic gestures, and idealized fantasies about your future together. Their words can be poetic, imaginative, and incredibly convincing. However, their ability to actually follow through and make good on those ideals, that's another story. You may find yourself constantly let down, confused by broken promises, and constantly scratching your head about blatant lies and deception. At their worst, Neptune-Mercury people can be incredibly deceitful. They actually believe their own delusions and their own fabrication. Gaslighting, constant flakiness, and a lack of accountability can be a constant issue with this placement. This is a red flag because trust and clear communication are the foundations of any healthy relationship. If you can't take what your partner says at face value and don't feel you're getting the full truth, this is a recipe for doubt, suspicion, and inevitable conflict. So what do you do if you're already invested in somebody who has this placement? The first step is to ensure that they take responsibility for honesty and accountability on their part. They have to be willing to see how they can be deceitful. And they also have to be willing to not want to live a life of constant delusion and avoiding of the truth. Reality checks, following through on words and actions, or being upfront about mistakes, unreliable or untrusting behavior is crucial. It's also important to point it out when fantasy is overriding the facts. With this aspect, you need to decide if the constant lapse into confusion is something that you're willing to deal with. Is this something that you can handle over the long term? Someone with this aspect can create an incredibly unstable, draining dynamic within relationships if their negative traits are left unchecked. Unless they see how their tendency to distort reality creates pain for those around them, these people will struggle with honest relationships. The next placement is Saturn in the 5th or 7th house. Individuals with these placements bring a lot of restrictions when it comes to relationships. The 5th house rules over romance, dating, creativity, and fun. The 7th house oversees committed partnerships, marriages, and one-on-one relationships. Saturn is the taskmaster associated with hard lesson, boundaries, delays, and limitations. So what does it mean when Saturn takes up residence in these love-focused houses? It can manifest as some pretty major obstacles, responsibilities, and heavy energy surrounding romance and intimacy. For those with Saturn in the 5th house, dating and pursuing fun and flirtatious connections can feel like a constant uphill battle. Their inner critic may harp on feeling unworthy of love or undeserving of enjoying themselves. Commitment issues and fears of vulnerability can also create walls around fully expressing themselves. Within relationships, this placement can make the passion and excitement feel very restricted, serious, or lacking. That playful spark may be dampened by excessive boundaries, criticism, or just a general low vibe around anything pleasurable. With Saturn in the 7th house, committing and maintaining long-term partnerships can be where the real challenge arises. These people often attract partners who are much older, come with baggage, or act as harsh teachers. Power struggles, control issues, and making sacrifices are all very common. At its worst, this can foster relationships that feel like a joyless grind filled with heaviness, rules, and limitations on personal freedom. Love and relationships should be inspiring, uplifting experiences that make you feel alive. If Saturn is raining on your parade constantly, this is a huge problem. However, individuals with these aspects can also build lasting long-term relationship. The key is to ensure that they're actually putting in an effort to make life better and happier. With this aspect, it's very important for the person to not fall into a pattern of accepting negativity. And they actually really have to put in extra effort to get themselves out of these negative holes in life and to see the good. An awareness of not becoming too repressed or bounded by limitations is very crucial. This person really just needs to learn to be more lighthearted and to loosen up much more. The next aspect is a moon conjunct or opposite Pluto. These aspects can bring some intense, controlling, and downright toxic energy to a relationship. My moon conjuncts my Pluto, and this is a particularly difficult aspect that I have to deal with and that I'm constantly bringing awareness to. But I also thank astrology because astrology is what really made me aware of my tendencies. And because of this, I'm actually able to have much better relationships now. So just because someone has one of these aspects does not mean it's all doom and gloom. You just need to know how to deal with it and work with it, and the person has to be willing to work through it as well. At its core, challenging Moon-Pluto aspects suggest power struggles, obsessive tendencies, and manipulation when it comes to emotional needs and intimacy. So what might you encounter dating someone with this placement? These people can be extremely possessive, jealous, and bordering on emotional abuse territory. Volcanic outbursts of anger over minor issues are also common. They may try to manipulatively play at your fears, insecurities, and emotional buttons to get what they want. Guilt trip, passive-aggressive stonewalling, and just general mind games are all part of their control arsenal. At their worst, Moon-Pluto natives have a scary ability to be incredibly vindictive, obsessive, and they cross major boundaries when they feel rejected or when their intense emotions are not met. Stalker-level actions and total disregard for your personal autonomy are a very real danger. An unchecked Moon-Pluto aspect can create a toxic, suffocating dynamic where you're constantly being manipulated, dominated, and robbed of any emotional independence. To make a relationship work with someone who has these aspects, you have to make them very aware of their darker side. You have to make them see how they can have these controlling and manipulative tendencies. More often than not, these people have an incredible ability to transform themselves and to become much better versions of themselves. But the only way they can do this is with support and awareness. These people can be incredibly loyal, they can be passionate, and they're unafraid to go deep emotionally and sexually. But they need to figure out how to manage their intensity and to not let their intensity make them a much more darker person. The next aspect is someone who has a Scorpio stellium. I don't want to demonize Scorpio energy entirely. It has so many incredible qualities like emotional depth, magnetism, and the ability to transform. But when that intensity gets amplified by a stellium, it can translate to some pretty intense romantic red flags. First off, you're dealing with someone whose feelings and sexuality run extremely hot, like lava scorching everything in its path. Scorpio stelliums have a laser-focused, all-consuming way of relating that can quickly veer into obsession territory. Jealousy, possessiveness, and completely disregarding boundaries in the name of passion are definite dangers with this placement. They may fall fast and hard, but they're also prone to keeping intense score and holding grudges over every slight perceived betrayal. At their worst, Scorpio stelliums can be downright manipulative, vindictive, and toxic when they feel slighted. Emotional blackmail, outrageously inappropriate outbursts, and refusal to let go of resentments are very real red flags. Basically, you're signing up for a roller coaster of intense highs and soul-shaking lows on a constant loop. That laser-focused gaze can quickly turn into an uncomfortable burn under a microscope. This is not exactly the stuff that lighthearted flings are made of. But if you're dating someone with a Scorpio stellium, I'm not saying that you should immediately run for the hills. Scorpio stellium individuals need to cultivate radical self-awareness. They also need to put conscious effort into not giving in to their obsessive tendencies. These individuals must learn to respect your autonomy, to not try to merge with you or possess you completely, and there also needs to be a dynamic within the relationship of empowering each other's independence. A commitment to work through triggers and resentments is also crucial. It's also important for this person to learn to go deep with people, but then for this not to go into like super toxic, abusive territory. These people can be incredibly spiritual bonded, loyal to the end partner. And this is incredible when managed properly. The last aspect to watch out for is Sun square or opposite Neptune. Hard Sun-Neptune aspects blur the line between fantasy and facts. The honest, vital life force energy of the Sun gets heavily fogged up and distorted by Neptune's rose-colored clouds of idealism and illusion. So what might you encounter dating someone with this placement? They give off an aura of being not quite there in the present moment. They're constantly spacing out, zoning out, and getting easily distracted by whimsical daydreams. This can create a bit of a wishy-washy, undependable feeling when it comes to making plans, following through on promises, or just general commitments and accountability. Their energy and focus is often everywhere, but nowhere all at once. At its worst, some Neptune people can be incredibly deluded, deceptive, and buy into their own fabricated fantasies completely. Lies, embellishments, and spinning grand tales that stray from reality aren't just occasional lapses, they legitimately struggle to separate fact from fiction. This makes it easy for them to idealize or glorify you and the relationship beyond any reasonable level, only to become disillusioned and blame you when the fantasy deflates. That hot and cold push-pull vibe gets exhausting really fast. This aspect can also manifest addictive, substance abuse, or generally checked out behaviors to escape reality. At the end of the day, you want a partner who is a grounded, trustworthy presence in your life. Someone who can be clear about who they are, and also clear about what they're bringing to the table without illusions muddying the waters. There's definitely potential to make it work with a person like this if boundaries and reality checks are constantly enforced. Brutal honesty, calling out deceptions, and avoiding escapist behaviors is key. These things should be completely unacceptable. These people can learn to tap into a side of themselves that is honest, a side that is authentic and trustworthy. But avoiding blatant issues with deception, as well as avoidance, is a path to disillusionment and mistrust within the relationships. So this is my video on what aspects you should watch out for when dating someone. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Have you ever dated someone who has these aspects? Does your partner maybe have any of these aspects? And what is the dynamic like? Do they struggle with it? Are they working to be a healthier, happier person? Let me know. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and check out the links in the description to my video to see my socials, as well as my website to see what I'm up to and connect with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.